Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Goodbye now. Okay, yeah, it's that kind of day. It's so cold. I had commitments. Okay. Fine. We'll make do with what we have, as always. Okay, so we talked about various forms of muktzah, and last but not least, I don't think we got into this much, the idea of the basis or the base. Basis is probably same etymology as base. They probably both come from the Greek or something like that. Good morning. You just told that you might not make it. And then you walked in.
I was lucky they're not coming till 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the idea of the base is muktzah by virtue of something else being muktzah. Right? A base is something which is meant to hold up something else. So the idea is that when you put something that's muktzah on top of something that isn't muktzah, then the thing on bottom becomes muktzah as well. Now, the principle behind it is that it's a base. That if you had, for instance, a cordless phone, right? Now, for those of you who have cordless phones, they have to get hung up on a base when you're not using them, right? So the base is meant to hold up the cordless phone, and you don't make a phone call with the base. You don't really do much with it, but maybe a better example would be if you had a computer desk, right? The computer desk is a base for the computer. There's nothing muktzah about a desk, but the computer desk is meant to hold up the computer. A microphone stand, a camera tripod, right? Those things, it's a base. The tripod, there's nothing muktzah about a tripod. You could put a salad bowl on top of it, but the tripod is designed as a base for the camera. So the rule is, now it happens to be, I'm actually not sure. Whether any of those things are actually muktzah when they're in and of themselves. I think they might be because they're designed to be exclusively, the camera tripod is exclusively for the camera, but that's really not what we mean when we talk about a base. When we talk about a base, we really mean something which actually has a muktzah thing on top of it. So if I have a non-computer desk, it's just a regular desk, but I put a computer on top of it, so if the computer is there on Shabbos, then the desk is a base for the computer, even if it's not a computer desk. Or if I have a podium that's used to make speeches in front of it, but I put a microphone on it before Shabbos, then the podium becomes a base for the microphone. And if I have a little if you have or you put candlesticks on the table becomes a base for the candlesticks. Now that would seem to create a whole host of problems on Shabbos. There are a couple of things that we have to know. Right, so first of all, why are we even having this discussion? If the table has candlesticks on top of it, then it doesn't matter whether the table is muktzah. The candlesticks are certainly muktzah. So how can I move the table? So the answer to that is, as we know, candlesticks can sometimes be removed from the table. First of all, they might fall off. Or if I need to, I can even tilt the table and knock them off, or carry the table someplace else to deposit the candlesticks safely if they are in the way and I need the space. However, that would only be true if, let's say, for sake of argument, they were put on the table accidentally. They don't really belong there. If they were supposed to be on the table, if when Shabbos started, the candlesticks had been left on the table intentionally, the table becomes a base for the candlesticks. And aside from the candlesticks themselves being muktzah, the table itself is muktzah, I wouldn't have the option of tilting the table or picking up the table because I couldn't even move the table itself. Now, it doesn't preclude if you're gymnastically trained and you want to use your foot to lift the table. As we said, with your feet you can do anything, but we're talking about those dispensations which allow you to kind of indirectly, or if somebody comes by, somebody somebody's not keeping shalom, and they remove the candlesticks, somebody steals the candle, whatever it is, somebody takes the candlesticks off. So, if they hadn't been put there intentionally, they say, okay, their candlesticks are removed. I'll have to work on getting the candlesticks back, but in the meantime, the table can be used. Whereas if the candlesticks have been placed on the table intentionally, even if the candlesticks are removed, the table is still muktzah for the duration of Shabbos. The rule is anything which is muktzah when Shabbos starts is muktzah for the entire Shabbos. That's where the idea of a base basically applies.
I have a sideboard in the rack.
Right.
Does that mean I can't lift something else off the sideboard?
So taking something off the sideboard is not a problem because you're not moving the sideboard itself. Just as we said in the very beginning, you can sit on a rock that's muktzah, you can put something on a rock that's muktzah, you just can't move the rock. So that's not a problem. Let me just say one thing. So the basic idea against buses is that when you have an item that is designed or designated, I should say, a tripod is designed for a camera, but in most cases it's not designed, but it's designated. Something is designated to be a receptacle for muktzah. It's a table or a stand or a pedestal that you have intentionally placed the muktzah item, at least when Shabbos begins. The non-muktzah item supports the muktzah item. The non-muktzah item is now also off limits for use for the entire Shabbos because it was designated as a muktzah holder, even if the muktzah ends up getting removed 2 minutes after Shabbos starts. Yes, that's what you're saying.
Because you can put things on the base, right?
Yeah, a base, right.
That's why I think it's good. That's why you can eat at the table that has candlesticks on it.
Yeah, right. So it's not a problem to eat on a table. Now, the thing you mentioned, so there's a couple of sort of leniencies to make, which make the concept much less intimidating. So first of all, it has to be intentional. So if you put something down because you came into the house and you had your hands full and you put something down and then you got ready for Shabbos, these short Fridays, there's very little time, and then you realize that you left something on the table that wasn't supposed to be there. That's not a base because it wasn't put there intentionally. Even if you put it there, it doesn't mean it fell. Maybe you put it there, you put it there, but not intentionally, meaning I don't want my wallet to be on the table. I just needed to put it down so that I can take off my coat, and I happened to put it in the nearest place. But it was never meant to remain there. And even if I meant to leave it there, but if I put it there, let's say Thursday night when I came home and I said I'm not going to work tomorrow, it's a short Friday, so and then your intention was to clean the table before Shabbos, but you got busy with other things, and then Shabbos started and you forgot to. So you meant to leave it there overnight, but you meant to take it off before Shabbos started. And as long as that was your intention, then again the point is that a base is something which was designated to be, for the duration of the Shabbos at least, to be a receptacle for the moksha. You did not intend this item to be a receptacle for the moksha for the duration of Shabbos. That's, I think, again, see if we come up. I think something like a wallet or a camera tripod, which is kind of inherently designed and always used for that purpose, there I think that it may be different because it's perpetually. So your wallet may not have money in it. Sometimes my wallet doesn't have money in it, but it still looks good because that's what it's there. It's there to hold money. But in most cases, a table or a sideboard, they're not meant exclusively to hold books. So they sometimes do and they sometimes don't. So the question really is, when Shabbos began, was it supposed to be serving that purpose? And if I put something that was muktzah on the table, but I did not mean that it should be there when Shabbos started, even if I forgot to take it off, and it was there when Shabbos started, but the table is not muktzah. And it also means that somebody else can. So if a guest comes and puts something, they bring you a beautiful gift. It's an expensive camera, and they leave it on the table, hoping to surprise you. And they're trying to figure out why you look surprised or not happy. You can look happy because the truth is that the camera does not make the table muktzah because they don't have authority to make your table muktzah for Shabbos. Only the owner, the one, an authorized representative that can make something muktzah, not.
There were 3-year-olds putting.
Right, 3-year-old could not. Right. Now, if the 3-year-old has I don't know exactly what the guidelines are. I imagine if the 3-year-old has their own desk, let's say, or their own little bed, and they put something in their own. It could be that they're because they do have a certain amount of. You give them a little bit of leeway on their own possessions. So could be that's different. Okay, so. Right, he says another example of that. So here's a few examples. Just okay. Yeah, we'll get to that. Right. Yeah. So just to look at it inside the book. So it has to be left there intentionally, right? So if it was forgotten, he gives it to there's sort of 3 subcategories of what you call forgotten, which is the legal terminology, I guess, that's used. So one instance of forgetting is it wasn't even put there on purpose. Something fell onto the table. It wasn't put there at all with any kind of intent. That's certainly not basis. Or he said a child a child puts a rock on his chair. I guess he writes his chair because, like I was just saying, if you put something that was, if the child was old enough to know what they were doing and they put it on their own chair, it might become upset. But the toddler does not really know what they're doing, so even if they put it on their own chair, it wouldn't make it muktzah because he doesn't have the capacity for halachically viable intent. And then another example is it was put there during the week. He says any day except Friday. I wasn't aware that there was a specific halachic distinction between Friday and other days. Sounds like that's what he's saying. The person did not consciously say, I want this to be there for Shabbos. Not considered intentional because you put something down on one day, it gets moved around. You don't assume that anything you put down on Tuesday is going to be there for the next 6 days. So you put something down on Tuesday without thinking about where it will be. Obviously it's not a permanent place, but that's not considered intentional for Shabbos. Obviously, that's different if it's the normal place to store it. If it says if you left money in your shirt pocket, that is typically a place where you keep money. So if you didn't take it up for Shabbos, the shirt is muktzah. Well, no, that's the problem with the idea of a base is that when something is intended to be a holder for the muktzah, then the holder itself becomes muktzah. So even if you take out the muktzah, it's still going to be muktzah until Shabbos is over, for the duration of this Shabbos. When we talk about removing the item, shaking it out, that's talking about where it wasn't a base, where it was put there unintentionally, it was forgotten, and therefore, so that's right. The pockets, there was a complication about pockets. It kind of depends what sort of pocket it is, so we'll see. But in principle, that's the idea. Even if you put something down close to Shabbos, but you intended to take it off before Shabbos, and you forgot, that's also considered unintentional. And then, according to most people, although not everyone agrees with the following idea, is that another example would be, even if it was put there on purpose, and even if it was meant to stay there for Shabbos, but it wasn't intended as a base. For example, you have a pantry, and in the pantry there are some muktzah and non-muktzah items. Give the example. You have 2 boxes on the shelf of your pantry. One is a box of matzah, and the other one is a box of dishwasher detergent. Or you have a freezer. There's a frozen challah and a piece of frozen raw meat. Or you have a drawer. Right? You have a wall and a pair. The point is that the reason things are piled on top of each other is not because one is meant to be on top of the other. It's just because you don't have enough space. And in order to fit things in, you put them that way. So the idea of a base is that the non-muktzah is meant to support or hold or contain the muktzah item. When it's simply a matter of trying to fit everything in and you really don't care what's on top, what's on bottom, or if you do it only because I want the smaller items on top of the big one just because they fit better that way, that's not considered busness. And again, wouldn't allow you to move the muktzah, but you could take the pair of pants out from under the wallet because I threw my wallet in there because I needed to, I'll get about to take a shower before Shabbos, and I threw the wallet into the drawer, but I didn't care if it landed on the pants. If anything, I would rather it didn't land on the pants, not crease the pants. So in that case, the pants do not become a bustus. Some people are strict about this, so it's better to avoid it. Again, when necessary, it's better not to rely on the leniency, but it's definitely a credible leniency when needed. If you have another box of matzah, better use the other box of matzah. But if you need this box of matzah, you can use it. Right. Okay. Fine. So the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that in many cases, an item is not exclusively one thing or the other. So, for example, if you put the candlesticks on the table, chances are you also put challah and a lot of other things on the table as well. And the general rule is that when something is a base for both muktzah and non-muktzah items, we give the table or the whatever it is, that the sideboard, we give it the status of the item of greater importance. So, for example, a bowl with coins, not muktzah, bowl also contains cookies that you're planning to eat for Shabbos. And you might wonder why the cookies are more important than the coins. And the answer is because you're going to use them on Shabbos. And something which you're using today is considered more important. I guess you can think about the philosophy of that, but the idea is doesn't matter if it's $100 bill and it's 2 cookies, but the 2 cookies are important to me now. I'm going to be using them on Shabbos. Challah and candlesticks. Okay. The candlesticks may be more valuable, but I'm not eating the candlesticks on Shabbos. I am eating the challah. So this is something discussed brought in the Mishabura and the Shulchan Aruch, that idea of putting a challah down on the tray, so that the tray does not, or the tray/table doesn't become muktzah, since there's also a challah on it at the same time. You're going to drawer with money before Shabbos. Right. So it all goes by the moment that Shabbos begins, which we don't know exactly when that is. So it needs to be, during that period of time. But yes, it goes at the beginning of Shabbos, and that's why if you had the example would be if you put this tray with candlesticks on the table, you put a challah on the tray as well. So once the candles are out, you can then move the tray with the candlesticks, even if the challah is no longer on the tray. In other words, you're going to light, let's say, the electric lights are on with the blackout. So you put the Shabbos candles at the table so that you can see while you're reading. But it's a small table and you really need the space. So you make sure that when Shabbos starts, you have a challah on the tray that holds the candlesticks. And because the challah and the candlesticks are side by side. When the candlesticks burn out, you go to sleep. The next morning, you can pick up the tray, you just carry it away. Even though there's no challah on it, all the tray has on it is candlesticks, and it's the tray. But the reason you're allowed to do that is that the tray at the beginning of Shabbos contained both the challah and candlesticks. Therefore, they do not get the status of muktzah. And at this point, what you're doing is tantamount to taking your broom and sweeping away garbage, or tilting a table and shaking off a hammer. So picking up a tray and carrying away the candlesticks is the same thing. You're simply using an indirect method of moving the muktzah thing out of the way because you need the table for something else. And there's nothing that's muktzah other than the candlesticks themselves, and those you're not handling directly, and it becomes okay. Whereas if you didn't put the challah on the tray, you wouldn't be allowed to move the tray because the tray is the base of the candlesticks, and it's the same thing as carrying the candlesticks. Now you could make the argument that I need the space which the candlesticks are occupying, but because candlesticks are usually expensive and delicate, that would be iffy. If a silver candlestick, those cheap wooden candlesticks, that would be okay because you're allowed to move them for the purpose of the needed space. Or if you need to crack a coconut with, that would also be a legitimate reason to move the candlesticks.
I have a side table that I have candles on, and most of the time I have a crock pot there that needs stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't use that crock pot stuff, but
it goes by each individual Shabbos. It goes by what the state of officials when Shabbos begin.
Can I not use that table, say, to put a book there?
You can put something on the table.
If nothing on it.
You're allowed to go outside, find a rock, sit on the rock, and read a book all afternoon on Shabbos, as long as you don't move the rock. Yeah. You can put stuff on it. You just can't. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Things but not the table. I have a similar thing that is kind of weird, and I think I understand the overarching principle, but on the table next to me, I sit on my couch. I have a jar of pens, and when it's before Shabbos, I can't access it. Does that make my table safe? Does that make my base?
Well, I thought you said you move it off the table.
No, I don't. I move it. It's a very large table, and as I sit here, I move it there behind a lamp.
Well, that's a good idea. Right? But why you're not moving the table anyway? Like,
No, I'm not moving the table ever.
right. So if you needed to move the table, you might have a problem considering that the table is a base for the pens. There is a point at which we say it's not a base because it's so insignificant. Like if you put a penny on a table, I think that would be an example. No one thinks that the table, even if you put it there on purpose, no one thinks the table is meant to be a base for the penny. It's so insignificant and so small. But I don't know exactly where you draw the line, like a jar of pens. The table's meant to hold it. But again, unless you're actually moving the table directly, and then it doesn't matter. The table might be a muktzah, but who cares? And if you just put a book on the table at the same time, and once Shabbos begins, you can take the book off. As long as the book was there when Shabbos began, and it's a book or a box of tissues or anything, it's not glass of water, anything that you're going to use on Shabbos.
Well, I have those things too, water and tissues.
Yeah.
It's not there before Shabbos that you realize
Yeah.
you can use that table to put a book down.
Yeah, you can muktzah. You can put things on muktzah, right?
It's only moving the table itself, which I couldn't possibly.
Yeah, if you go on your way to shul, you can stop. If you're carrying a siddur, you can put it down on top of a car. You realize it's almost the time for Shema. You can stop at the nearest car, put your siddur on the car. Say Shema. Nothing wrong with that. You can also open the car and take something out if you need to, but not if it's going to turn on the light. They talk about that. They say it's not a good idea to do it if other people are watching because it looks strange to people. But you can, if your car doesn't have interior lights or the lights are disabled, you can open the car door and get something out if you need to. It's not worse than any other example. Yeah. Yeah, it can't burn. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, they were talking about it before the Ackermans had the current setup. There were all kinds of conversations about Rosh Hashanah, where the Rebbe is going to stay, and where the Rabbi going to stay. There were these ideas where they were floating.
I once rented a van. Yeah, the mayor's van outside.
Yeah.
A big RV.
People do that. Yeah, I heard about it. Always look enticing, but I'm sure they're less comfortable than anybody's house. So,
Rebbe Grossman?
Yes.
Rebbe Grossman?
Yeah.
If I'm sorry, this is not really related, but I need an answer. I started Birchas Hamazon, and then I went back and started eating. I'm not bread. I want to eat some eggs. Do I say a bracha, or does the chamotzi that I said before I started Birchas Hamazon?
Once you say bracha hamotzi, it resets your bracha, and if you want to continue eating, you need to make a new hamotzi.
Oh, but I'm not eating. I'm just eating eggs.
You make whatever bracha whatever food you're eating, you need to do bracha because you're terminating.
Because when I started Birchas Hamazon, it voided the chamotzi.
Yes, right, and so you're starting from scratch.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. So okay, let's proceed. So we'll talk about the parsha a little bit. All right, we have Vayeshev. So this is I've been struck by this in recent years. I don't know if there's a something profound. I'm sure there is something profound, but we like to we are taught that the right way to understand Torah is through the lens of our teachers. That goes from the very beginning of the Gemara and the Midrashim, what we call Chazal, and to Rashi, and to those who followed Rashi, and to even our Rebbeim today. But just an observation is that the Torah is too big to describe in our own words, but if you look at how the Torah is set up, I guess you could say, it starts with creation. And it begins in Parshas Bereshis. Eila told us Shamayim v'aretz. Right? These are the word toldos. I mean, there's a parsha in the Torah called toldos. That means toldos, like from the word yeled, the word give birth, yeled, a boy, a child. These are the offspring, so to speak, the generations. And the Torah uses that term often to mean kind of the happenings, all of the we talk about it in the laws of Shabbos, the types of work are the avos and the toldos, the parents and the children. We mean like the general categories and the subcategories. So the whole Torah begins after telling us that there was a creation. So we're told these are toldos shemayim va'aretz. These are the kind of the offspring, the outcome, the way things develop. These are the products of the heavens and earth. Right? And it begins right away by talking about the story of man. Now, further in, still in Parshas Bereshis, this Sefer Toldos Adam. This is the book of the Toldos Adam, the generations of man. Right? This is the account of the descendants of Adam. The article says, made a man and a woman. The man lived 130 years. He had a son called Shes. We know the first two children, Cain and Hevel, neither of them have surviving descendants today, so it's just Shes who's the ancestor of modern man, and then goes to the 10 generations until Noach. And then when Noach arrives on the scene, we're told that things have become corrupted and there was a need for a reset. The next parsha, the second parsha of the Torah, Eila told us Noach. These are the descendants of Noach. And then we're told the story of Shem, Cham, and Yefes have 3 children, but even before that, we're told Noach ish tzaddik tzaddik hayavador. So Noach was a righteous person. Rashi tells us Ikar told us until the main offspring of righteous people are not the children, even Noach, who had billions of children, but his main children were his good deeds. And then after the flood, the whole story of the flood, which the Torah recounts, the Eila told us Bnei Noach. We have the descendants or the offspring of the children of Noach. So Shem, Cham, and Yefes, they had children again for 10 generations until we get to the story of Abraham and the story of Lech Lecha. Right? And Abraham, we know, did not have children for quite a while. He eventually had Yitzchak, he had Yishmael, and he had Yitzchak. Where are we? Here. Okay. We have at the end of Parshas Chayesara, we have the Eila told us Yishmael ben Abraham. These are the descendants of Yishmael, the son of Abraham, and it runs through he had 12 princes, right? Just as Yaakov would eventually have 12 tribes, Yishmael also becomes a progenitor of 12 tribes, and they have many descendants. Okay. The next parsha, Eila told us Yitzchak. These are the children of Yitzchak, and then we're told the story of Yaakov and Esau. A lot of things happen. Right? Finally, at the end of last week's parsha, after Yaakov and Esau grow up and they have a falling out, and Yaakov runs away, Yaakov comes back, they have a reconciliation of sorts, and we're told that Esau eventually, after they meet and embrace, and Esau travel together, Yaakov says no thanks. So at first, Esau was coming to attack Yaakov, then Esau was coming to embrace Yaakov, and Yaakov kind of protects himself from both of those things and sends Esau on his way. And then it says Yaakov does return to the land of Canaan, but then Esau picks up and leaves. He can't bear to be around Yaakov or he's too afraid to be around Yaakov, or he doesn't want to deal with the baggage of he wanted the blessings, and he doesn't like the price that the blessings demand. But what's in store for Yaakov's descendants. So Esav leaves and goes to the land of Seir. The parsha ends with Ela told us Esav who Edom. These are the descendants of Esav. Esav is Edom, and we're told about all Esav's descendants and the various tribes and chieftains and leaders. And that's that. And then in this week's parsha, Vayeshev Yaakov, Ela told us Yaakov. These are the descendants of Yaakov. So the whole Torah is basically it's a series of almost like family histories. There's the family of heaven and earth, the family of man, the family of Noah, the family of Ishmael, the family of Yisrael, the family of Esau, the family of Yaakov. Almost as if everything is a story, and everything is a story of somebody's history, somebody's family. Just a question of which family. Are we looking at the universe? Are we looking at the children of man? Are we looking at the children of Abraham? Now Rashi says, Ela told us Yaakov. Vayeshev Yaakov is after. That's the first sentence of the parasha. Before Ela told us Yaakov, the first sentence is Vayeshev Yaakov. Yaakov settled in the land where his fathers lived, in the land of Canaan. So Rashi says the following: after writing about the way Esav and his descendants settled in an abbreviated form, because they were not important or worthwhile to dwell on the details of how they came to settle where they did and the history of the various battles in which they drove out the previous inhabitants, which are referred to, he says, later on in Dvarim. But after that, it now goes on to give the details of Yaakov's history and the way his descendants found their way through history in a much longer form, with all the different steps of cause and effect that led to that, because they're very important and precious to Hashem to dwell on them at length. We similarly find the 10 generations from Adam to Noach, so-and-so begat so-and-so, and when it came to Noach, we spoke about him at length. The 10 generations from Noach to Abraham were very abbreviated, but once Abraham came, we had a lot to say about him. And it's like a pearl fell into the sand. A person sifts through the sand, feels his way till he gets the pearl, and then casts away the sand and takes the pearl. So what is Rashi telling us? Rashi's telling us that we're about to read a very interesting story about Yosef and his brothers, and a very eventful life of Yosef. Fact is more interesting than fiction. A lot of drama, a lot to learn about. What about Esav? Was Esav's life boring? Esav, the man of the field, the warrior? Well, certainly not. Right? You could have filled up a book about Esav's stories of Esav as well. It would have been interesting. Not that it's any less interesting, but it's less interesting to Hashem. Right now, we know everything the Torah tells us has a lesson. Right? A moral message is something to be learned from it. The behavior of our forefathers, Yaakov, Yosef, Yosef's brothers are all tzaddikim. And obviously it's our history, right? It's our ancestors. These are the people that become the Jewish people.